What I say, I'm not complaining, I'm just explaining. I'm sorry about that. My wife's probably gonna kill me because I left my bid sheets at the senior center for their fundraiser. I don't know if anybody's gonna outbid me or if I'm gonna owe a lot of money when we're done, we'll see. Chief Hall just called from the fire department and he is running just a few minutes behind, so Chief Mew is here for the police. I will just skip real quick to Health and Human Services. Diane Engel stated pretty much status quo. I don't know what that meant, but unavailable for today's meeting. And let's see, anybody from here from OEM, going once, going twice, OEM. Okay, emergency management, Office of Emergency Management controls our emergency operations center as well as preparedness, disasters, training, and functioning of the municipality in times of emergency disaster. So if he comes in, we'll fit him in the schedule. Chief, we're talking about two very important tasks today. So in the interest of, I guess, all other topics, we're going to be talking about, of course, Title IX changes. Ms. Tucker will be here shortly with about 50 copies of a working draft. And for everybody's edification, this has not been presented to the Assembly for the notice of public hearings or for consideration of passage. It's strictly a working draft that can be edited and changed. So what you hear and see today, we'll take away with you, and I encourage and solicit opinions and ideas, suggestions for changes or whatnot. This has been a years-long process, I understand it, and I kind of picked up the ball. It's Ms. Tucker now, well-timed. I picked up the ball in accordance with the Public Safety Committee, with Ms. Tucker from our Assembly Council, and I think we found some very interesting information that is beneficial to all of us in the community, in particular your industry. So we'll explain that in a minute, but Chief, on the police report from the police department, I know it's budget time and there may be other issues that
we're going back and forth on the budget. We're starting an academy in October 24th. That's 2 weeks from yesterday, or 2 weeks from Monday. 30 people in the academy, accepted positions. That's how many we wanted to have. That's 2 more than what we usually have. So we have high hopes for that. This is a hope. This is a projection. My crystal ball is really fuzzy, but this round of people passed at a higher rate than normal. So I'm hoping that trend continues through academy and FTOs, and we may end up, as you know well, Paul, one academy a year kind of treads water for you, but don't really grow on it because of attrition. Our attrition right now is way down. If that trend holds and the trend of this crowd's ability to pass tests hold, we might actually gain some ground on this. So I'm cautiously optimistic that that will occur. But in any event, we will get started with them Monday morning, the 24th.
Any questions on that? Chief, just a real quick explanation. Academy's now 5.5, 6 months around there? 5.5 months?
The whole thing, they may be scheduled to get loose on August 1st. So I'd have to subtract the 3.5 months for FTOs. That leaves you 5 months, I guess.
So if all else goes well, no delays, no extensions, no concerns, nobody getting hurt, and we maintain everybody through all the process, they would finishing the FTO on August 1st.
They'd be cut loose on their own August 1st.
30
or however the days off work, but right around that.
What's historically what our retention through that process? Do you recall?
Historically, 60% make it, 40% don't. I'm hoping we change that equation this time around. Of course, every chief has hoped that. But normally, to get this many people, we'd have to have, 1,600 people, I think, in the hopper. We didn't start with 1,600 in the hopper. We still got probably 40 applicants through the entire process that we could choose from for 30 positions. So they really did get through it at a high rate, and we made some pretty drastic changes to the polygraph and the background. So we were pretty tight on these guys, tighter than we've been in the past, and they still passed it at a greater rate. So I think we've got a good quality batch. I've got high hopes for them.
Just great, Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Mew, did you say that there were 30 folks who are going to be in the academy?
Yes.
Okay, and did you also say that the academy would start around October 24th?
Yes.
And did you also say that they won't be on the street until August 1st?
That's correct.
That's a long time, isn't it?
It is.
Is that alone?
Is that normal? I mean, I
Yes.
don't remember
In fact, we
those
even shortened
statistics.
it up a little bit.
Wow, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But by cutting them loose, you mean alone
Alone,
in
fully
their
done,
own-
on their own.
on August 1st?
Yes.
Okay, and when does the academy actually end and their tour of duty actually begins with another
Thank you.
officer?
It's about April timeframe.
Okay.
Okay,
Something.
I think that's what,
That's
yeah.
the difference here.
The academy, you know, it takes them through the winter, and it's classroom and driving and shooting and things like that, but it's a school environment. Then they get paired up, they do a month, we cut them in thirds, put a third of them on mids, a third of them on swings, a third of them on days, and they work with a field trainer driving 2 to a car.
Mhm.
And they gotta check off a bunch of stuff in the book that they can demonstrate they can do it. And then they all trade places at the end of each month, so they each get a chance to work a month on each of the 3 shifts. Then they go back to their primary shift, wherever that was, it's gonna be different for, you know, it could be mids, days, or swings. And they go on observation, and what that is they're in the police car alone for 2 weeks, and their FTO is driving behind in an unmarked car or an undercover car in plain
Mhm.
clothes and shadowing them, bailing them out if they get in trouble, and seeing if they can handle things on their own. And if they make it through all of that, then they're cut loose. Then they fill a spot on the roster where they're working alone, unsupported, they're pulling their own weight. Up until then, they're just doubled up with somebody else, so you don't get the benefit of the extra body.
Great.
Anything else?
No, thank you for the clarification, because that's where I got confused with the timeframe, yeah.
Sure, no problem.
Are there enough, money in the budget to cover the resources, vehicles, weapons, equipment, uniforms? Is there gonna be a need for the
Well,
upcoming
I think
budget?
the budget isn't a problem. We held up on, buying cars for a while because we're waiting to see how this new vehicle procurement thing is gonna go. We recently got word that we could put in for vehicle purchases, and so we started that paperwork about 2 weeks ago because there's a winter bill, there's 2 winter bills. There's one in like late November or something, and another one in January, so if we're gonna have cars, we gotta get them ordered before the bill, or we're hot water, so we started that process. And Dick Stauff and Fleet Services are trying to figure out, how many we need, because of course we've got older vehicles that just took another year on, so they, get pretty high mileage, we're gonna wanna cycle some of those out, and we have to have enough vehicles for the recruits, and we'll have to have them by August 1st, so we're balancing all that. I'm not sure how many vehicles that means, or whether the budget is sufficient or not. We've got some slot, because we can keep some vehicles a little bit longer, I suppose, but we're working through that exercise.
Thanks, Chief. Anything else from the departments?
A-Warn's coming on, the portables are all issued, training's been done, guys are getting used to that. You guys are seeing the contracts for the last of the towers up in Eagle River, and we will wait till that work is done before we throw the switch on the mobiles. The portables can work everywhere in Eagle River now, so we're starting on the interoperability and testing the infrastructure by using portable. So if there's any problems, that's gonna be good, because we can just go back to the other portable until the problems get fixed. So by the time we make the investment in converting the car radios, we should have the infrastructure tested.
So is right now, when when someone in the field hits their portable, are they over the new system right now? Is it going over the new
Yes.
system? So
In the Anchorage Bowl, not in Eagle River, because we don't have the towers up in Eagle River yet in sufficient numbers. So,
Because I'm noticing, and of course, I scan for traffic reporting in the mornings, I notice that it's scratchier in some portables, and it's more clear, almost like a digital sound on, apparently it's A-Warn LMR.
well, the portables are on A-Warn now, and we're using the zone controller to make them come through the UHF dispatch center, the UHF car radio, the mobile radio. So it's computer magic that's making the 2 disparate systems talk together. And then we'll bring on Eagle River, and then if it's stable, then we pull the old car radios out, put the new car radios in, turn off the zone controller, and we're good to go on 700 megs digital. So,
And for ratification, go ahead, Ms. Rum.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed the alphabet soup. What is this system called, and what does it stand for? A-WAR?
A-Warn is the Anchorage Wide Area Radio Network.
Ah, okay,
And it's the
great.
municipal system,
Okay.
which is interfaced with ALMR, which is Alaska Land Mobile Radio.
Okay, Okay. Eagle River has always complained about coverage in, whether it's been internet coverage or telephone coverage or anything else. My experience has been Eagle River is always the last to get anything, so I'm not surprised that your coverage is poor in Eagle River.
It's always been, Eagle River is very difficult because of the big mountains and the deep valleys that you gotta get the signals back into. And we have something called Connect Fade that we dealt with. The Connect Tower, what we do is, if you wanna get up Eagle River Road or Eklutna, you can't make the radio signals bend, so you bounce them over the inlet and then back up, kinda like you would with a billiard ball on the table. You
Well,
bang it.
I'm seeing the valley on that map over there.
Yeah, so
Is that what you're talking, so you're talking about directly across the inlet where those two straight lines meet?
If you're trying to get the radio signal from
Yeah.
here to here,
Mhm.
you bounce it off Connect Tower, which is about here, and it bounces up.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
now they've got a deal where the tide goes up and down on sunny days, it screws up the radio signal, we call it Connect Fade.
Oh my God.
It's high tide and sunny days, your radios go dead in Eagle River. I mean, so they're trying to cure that. They moved the tower. There was some land use issues on, depending on who owned the land, where the tower was gonna go. There's a lot of complicated things besides the radio itself.
Added to that $500,000 on the Port Shoal study.
There you go.
Okay, the Connect Fade, that's a good one, thank you.
So we're trying to fix all those. There's gonna be more towers under A-Warren than there ever were under the old VHF or UHF system. So the system is gonna be very robust compared to what we used to have. And it's, we're able to encrypt it, and it's got other safety features, a number of safety features in it. You know, panic alarms and location information. You can program it on the fly. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with it. Plus, the major thing is interoperability. We'll have channels where we can talk to the fire department or the state troopers or everybody or the school district or whoever we need to in cases of disaster.
Great.
And just for edification, that was one of the big concerns, is ALMR is a federal, state, municipal collaborative process so that we can communicate in times of emergency or disaster. Think 9/11, when we couldn't talk to each other within one home state, and this is a kind of an attempt to do that. And I say kinda, it should work that way in theory, and it was supposed to be done regionally, so the north started, then the southeast, then south central was kinda like the last, I think, in the region, so.
Yeah, ours is a bit different because ALMR is it's VHF radio. It's down around 151 megahertz. It's like your boat radios. And that makes sense for those, for the troopers and Coast Guard and people like that, because they're either transmitting over water or they're transmitting long straight distances where you have the repeaters along the roads and highways. It doesn't work so well in Anchorage because UHF radio doesn't, or VHF doesn't penetrate buildings and trees and mountains too well. So we wanted to go with higher frequency. So we're at 700 megahertz, which is almost microwave. It's pretty hot. And you can transmit in buildings better. It goes through brick, steel, and trees better than
Right.
UHF. The problem now is the two systems are on different spectrum and they don't talk to each other. So it's computer magic. It's a zone controller. Computers take our signals, convert it to, and send it out on, rebroadcast it on their signals to the other direction coming in. So we still talk. The end user, they don't realize they're on different systems. We still can talk to people. But that's why we have two different names for the systems. They are completely two different systems that without the computer controllers, they wouldn't be able to talk to each other.
On that issue, if the computers are down due to a power outage, then we're out of luck.
Well,
Or the computers,
We would
are
be
the
out of luck.
computers that control these on a separate power
they have,
supply or something like that?
the zone controllers are, the repeaters all have their own power generation. Okay, so the towers are powered by their own generators. I don't remember if the zone controller sits out on a tower or if it's located in the central facility, but it has power generation as well. So they built in redundancy for that.
So in the event of an emergency, like Mr. Hahnemann was talking about, this system is a standalone system that can operate if our cell phones go out of whack, if our power goes down and you know, city power is out, that
There
sort of
would
thing.
be 3 ways the system can operate. One is if everything went down, all the towers, the zone controllers, everything went down, you would switch to a direct channel on your portable and you talk portable to portable. Okay, on your battery power,
And
there'd be
that's,
no repeater.
and that's kind of line of sight.
Line of sight,
Okay.
maybe 5 miles radius.
Mhm.
We'd have to relay.
Okay.
I'd call you and you'd call Paul.
Right.
Paul would answer you.
Right, and somebody on the Glen Highway calls somebody up in the valley.
Right, we
Yeah.
go send somebody to the top of a building to relay, cause you get a higher, you know.
We call
you
it
do
tow
that.
truck, we have them put it.
But probably not every tower's gonna go down. So some repeaters are gonna be up and running, so the coverage should be okay.
Right,
If the zone controller goes down, then we could talk amongst ourselves, we wouldn't be able to talk to troopers. That would be
Mhm.
the downfall.
okay. So there's redundancy at various levels for various kinds of emergencies, that's good to
There
hear.
are, and there's
Okay.
intermediate
Great.
things called failover and fail soft, and that has difference. If the trunking goes down but the radio system's up, or if smart net system goes down, but the individual towers can take over. So the training is difficult because you gotta learn how to operate in these different functions, but there's lots of redundancy built into it.
In theory,
Thank you.
that's why it's built this way, so that it can be a standalone, and, you know, a lot of bad,
Right.
very, very bad things would have to happen for us to be
Right,
totally out.
right.
Not that that couldn't happen.
Right, no, you brought it up, so I just wanted to make sure that we're covered, so.
Good.
Okay.
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Chief, I'm sorry, I know you're running behind it. Are you prepared to do a real quick, synopsis
sir,
of the
yeah.
fire department? Okay.
Sure, I apologize for being late.
No worries.
I actually went to the wrong place. But, what's happening on the Anchorage Fire Department is, we just had sent, 2 folks back to, Pennsylvania to look at our, engine 2 and engine 8. They're being built, and we did what we call 50% inspection. That's done, we hope to get those vehicles by the end of November. And engine 8 goes up on the hillside, it's a 4-wheel drive. Engine 2 is downtown, we'll be replacing 2 old engines. We have 14 people, right now in the academy. They are, I think this is about their 3rd month in, I guess. And, that's for Medic 7. Well, those are the bodies. We've already got Medic 7 in service, but these are supplanting that. So, and then as you know, we had the 29 that we put on the street, which have been a big help for us in regards to our overtime issue. So,
Great.
things are going well there. I know Medic 7's busy, been pretty busy. Ms. Drummond was out there when we were able to cut the ribbon on that, and I think she might even talk to some of the guys out there about how it's going. It'll be a big help for us out there. We are trying to finish up our props in the training center. You know, I think I gave, Ms. Drummond, Ms. Gray a tour a while ago, but remember some of the burn rooms that we had, and we actually tried to get a grant to help us buy the props, and we weren't able to do that. So we had some money set aside, and those, we have the low bid, so we're hoping to get those installed before the end of the year. And then, so that'll be another great training tool for us, and we're actually trying to market the training center. Y'all have been there, you see how big and nice it is. We have the state that's in the office building with us, we rent things to them, so that's a little bit of a help for us. And that's going very well, we have a good symbiotic relationship with them. State of Alaska Fire Training is in there with us, and that helps really well. We're in the midst of hiring 2 vacant assistant chiefs positions that we've had vacant for quite some time. We have 3 folks, that we are doing final interviews on the 24th of October. And hopefully get those folks to work after, if we offer them a job and they take it, give them 2 weeks to 30 days notice, depending on where they're coming from and what they're doing now. So by the end of the year, we hope to have those folks on. That's gonna help out tremendously with health and safety. Right now, we have an acting safety officer, HSO, health safety officer, so that'll be a big help. Had a couple significant events this week. Mark may have already talked about them, like the shooting, and then we had a car go into a vehicle, a house yesterday, almost drove through the house, actually. And luckily, nobody was hurt.
I saw it on the news yesterday.
Guys and gals did a great job on the job, on the seasons. I think that's it for a quick update. As you know, the budget's out. We were all told to cut, I think it was 4-point-some-odd% of our budget. Luckily for us, we had the SAFER grant. That's a tremendous help to us. We're hoping to save overtime monies by having these people on the books. And then we also had, like I said, the SAFER grant helped us out. And we had some vacant positions that we're actually not gonna fill. And as part of the, y'all heard of the Kronos, that they're trying to get payroll down to automation. So they're looking at that, and we saw the writing on the wall, so that helped us with our budget, that they're trying to make that more efficient, if you will. And we had 3 payroll people and 1 payroll supervisor see what's happening in the future, both with Kronos and accounts payable. You know, we're trying to centralize some of those things. It's just a work in progress, but we're keeping our eyes on it and making sure we're trying to stay above water.
Very good. Ms. Kujais.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't had a chance to review the budget yet, but you mentioned vacant positions that weren't filled. How many are there that aren't filled?
That aren't filled right now?
For the 2012 budget?
Um,
And what are they, if it's not a big of a list?
Right, it's not a huge number.
Right.
The assistant chief's positions, we've been trying to fill those since March. We actually offered jobs to folks. Both of them had come from outside. And one turned down the offer right away. The other one said, yeah, I'll take it. And then I think when the time he talked, he was coming from Georgia.
So wait 1 second.
Sure.
So, there are authorized positions for the 2012 budget that aren't filled. Are there any positions? Do you see what I'm
No.
saying,
Yeah,
what I'm
no,
asking?
we don't have any that aren't filled. at this
Okay,
time.
for 2012.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Sorry.
Chairman. That's okay.
Mr. Chair, I have.
Ms. Drummond?
Thank you for bringing up the House collision, I don't know what you call that. I had a call from a constituent this morning who wanted to know why the driver wasn't arrested. And I looked at the story, and my assumption is that you're gonna leave that person in the hospital. They were apparently hospitalized, the driver who hit the house on Lake Otis.
I didn't read the newspaper article, but what I got briefed on was that the woman crashed through the house, and we took her, she was injured, we took her to the hospital, she escaped from the hospital room. We had to, chase her down and capture her. And I don't know her status right now, but, Mindy's suggesting that, we're waiting on blood. to know.
Okay, but without knowing any details, I told the caller that you normally don't arrest people and remove them from their hospital bed, say they were hospitalized, because then you would become responsible for their hospitalization costs.
Let me speak hypothetically, because I don't know
Okay,
this case.
right.
But two things that commonly happen is, one, just that, the person's injured, they're not going anywhere. We keep tabs on them, but we don't wanna spend money to park a cop watching them, or
Right.
hire a security person.
Right.
And, so we don't charge them until, or arrest them until they're ready to get medically cleared.
Right.
The other thing is, sometimes when we have DWI cases, we go through the process where you take breathalyzer, and that's how we establish that. If you're not in condition to take breathalyzer, then you gotta take blood. So you need search warrants to get medical blood if it's the hospital took the blood for their own reasons. Or if we had blood drawn specifically for us, then we gotta wait for the lab to get done with that.
Okay.
And we won't probably make charges until we have that results, that evidence known.
Okay.
So it could be either one of, or both of those
Okay.
issues.
Okay, good. So I was partly right, and without having all the details on the thing, that's what I told this caller. They were very upset that you didn't arrest them on the spot. But, you know, from what I could tell, they were hospitalized, and you were trying to keep them in the hospital.
Yeah, so sometimes you wanna figure out when arresting on the spot's gonna cost you money unnecessarily.
right.
And also you don't wanna arrest too early. I mean, it could technically be, we've got enough that we meet the bottom line threshold of probable cause, so we could make the arrest. That starts a 120-day clock, and if that lab work doesn't come in, then we can't get to trial in time, we lose the case. So sometimes we wait till our ducks are in a row and then charge them, unless we think something's complete.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to the resolution on that one. That was quite spectacular. And nobody got hurt. I mean, the building was demolished, but
I heard there was a
apparently
woman
they were.
sitting on a couch and she was barely missed or something.
Yeah, that's amazing.
If she'd been hit, it'd have been.
Just amazing. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, Chief. I appreciate it.
And I don't know if you guys heard or not, but we just scooped number 2 in shooting, and we're looking for number 3.
Very good.
Thanks, Chief. Rob, you have any quick report for OEM?
Yeah, sorry, I'm late. We do have a couple things to report. Of course, October is Energy Awareness Month, and we'll be holding a exercise in conjunction with that. Also, we are asking the public on the 19th, there will be a test to see if we can do a reduction in natural gas. This gives us kind of a baseline when we do these tests of what it'd be like if we did have a catastrophic loss of natural gas. So on the 19th from 6 tabletop is coming up October 27th. And this isn't open to the public, but it is a exercise just to let you know the emergency management, along with utility companies, police department, fire department, are all testing if there was a loss of natural gas in the city, in a certain section of the city, how would we continue business, continuity of operations, how we make sure that the public gets taken care of. And that'll be on the 27th, where we'll be doing an exercise on that event. That's about it.
So I apologize, I was zoned for a second. Brown bag, what's the brown bag topics for the
Oh,
month?
yeah, the brown bag, we do have a brown bag coming up on the, let's see, October 21st, getting ready for winter. And unfortunately, I left all my flyers over at the city hall where I was sitting and realized that I was in the
No worries, I apologize.
But anyways, I do have a flyer, but, brown bag again is open to the public. You come out to the Emergency Operations Center, and, we have it October 21st, from 12 to 1, and it's preparing for winter. Thank you.
Thanks, sir, appreciate it. Questions? Comments?
Where's the OEM?
Oh, the Office of Emergency Management's on 1305 East Street.
Okay.
It's in between Chugiak and Central High,
Right.
or excuse me, Elementary.
Mhm.
You want to park on the Chugiak Elementary side, it's the upper hill. The other side of the building belongs to ACS.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Fish, appreciate it. Okay, so, apologize, we had to do the monthly, meeting in for the public safety side, and it delayed a little bit, but we need to get into the meat and potatoes now. We haven't choreographed this with Assembly Council. Ms. Tucker, was there, I noticed Amanda's, bringing up something over there. Is there a PowerPoint or anything that you'd like to?
Well, I had a couple of PowerPoint slides
Okay.
that I thought might be helpful just as background.
Very good. Let's discuss kind of the framework of the discussion here for today and how crucial it is. And I want to thank each and every one of the tow operators. Just a show of hands, how many people here are tow operator owners or employees of tows? Tow companies. Quite a few, okay. I'm not sure if everybody has made it here today or a representative. I hope so. I really don't want, we have had some discussion on towing issues, particularly coming out of private parking lots, businesses. And at least one person was saying, well, we never really contacted. There's been every effort from our office, I know from my office and from the clerk's office, to try to notify each of the tow operators that are on file at the municipality. This is not a new topic as far as potential changes in the towing industry, the towing code when it comes to Title IX. There's another section of the code, Title 10, that talks about your permitting and what's required for permitting. For the purpose of today's discussion, that's a separate entity. We're not going to discuss that today. However, I believe it's under Title 10, Ms. Tucker, if I'm not correct. If I'm correct, I hope. And that is, that requires persons to submit rate sheets. Is that Title 10 or is that Title 9? I'm looking on Title 9.
They're in both, I believe.
Okay.
There's a lot of replication between Title 9 and 10.
Okay.
The 10 is the licensing requirements, and Title 9 is sort of the outline of the program.
Okay, and I don't have a full code, so we're just talking a draft here. Here's the gist of what has happened, and I'll defer to Ms. Tucker to explain further. But as a purpose of discussion, there was some review requested. Ms. Gray Jackson had some input and some research being done. Mr. Flynn, another colleague from Government Hill downtown Fairview, also had some research being done. Mr. Gutierrez, previous to the Assembly, also had been working on this. Mr. Trainey, previously, when he was on the Assembly before, now back. So this, you can tell, has been a discussion that's been ongoing for some years, in fact. I know several of you have actually been participating in some of those discussions. And here's the gist of what's happened. Through our research, we found that there's been a report to Congress in 2007, and Ms. Tucker actually did a presentation recently and is very learned on this, so I want to defer to her at some point to kind of explain fully. And what it literally says is something akin to this. I asked Ms. Tucker, could you please research why, if I can't tell a vehicle mechanic what their rate sheets are for normal business, and I can't tell an appliance repairman to give us the city to post their rate sheets for what their normal course of business is, why are we telling the tow companies to give us a rate sheet of what they charge for normal course of business? And what I mean by that is a consensual tow. Somebody calls you up and says, can you tow my car from point A to point B? And really, it's none of the municipality's business. We want to make sure you're properly licensed, insured, there's permitting required in Title 10. And so Ms. Tucker's research, as I understand it, has actually discovered that, in fact, because of deregulation, thanks to at least one operator, we really shouldn't be requiring that for the normal course of business. So, in essence, in short, sometime soon, coming to a venue near you, we will be removing that requirement for normal course of business to all tow operators. So there's really no reason for you to post a rate sheet to the municipality for your normal course of business tows. And by that, again, I mean consensual tows between parties. They come to you just like any other business and they get their bids and they pick how they choose. And that's just the short of it. So we'll be discussing Title 10 and any relevant chapters and languages in Title 9. That is as a report of a result of the research that Ms. Tucker did. Another area that really stood out, and this is as a result of many complaints from many constituents over many years, and that is on private person tows, non-consent, somebody taking someone else's property without their permission or authority from a private business or a private lot. And we've been hearing both anecdotal and some real-time complaints from people about rates associated with that. And by that is, someone parks their vehicle in a private lot or someone else's property. It's either posted or not posted. Someone calls in and says, can you come tow this car? A tow company comes and takes the car. By law, of course, by ordinance, you're to report it to APD that you have the car for these reasons, and here's the VIN and here's the plate. All right, that is where we get into this kilt on what are the rates, what are the charges, and how much is too much, and that sort of thing. And frankly, I don't know the actual answer to that. So the closest thing we've come to is going back through the review, is finding that the municipality as a government entity can regulate dollar amounts, if you will, by what is reasonable, and we'll have to define what is reasonable because it's been an ambiguous word, and also based upon issues or another type of tow, which is the governmental request tow, and that is what we all now know, or most of you, some of you may be participating in the rotational towing contracts for various things. Rotational tows at the request of the police at a car crash, or a disabled vehicle, or a parking problem tow. The other part, of course, is the DUI, no insurance, or DWLR, DWLS. And if you guys are in part of those contracts or tows, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're not, you probably don't. So I guess real briefly, since Mindy McCulley is here, she's the impound supervisor, chief, with your permission, I'd like to have Mindy just explain a little bit about the rotational towing contracts, because what Ms. Tucker found is, in fact, the municipality of Anchorage was probably a little bit ahead of the game when it came to the rotational towing contracts. And I have to give kudos to the police department, Ms. McCulley here, about that. So if you could just briefly, if you would mind, explain the rotational towing contracts, kind of how it came to be and how it works.
Sure. Back in 2004, about March of 2004, is when we initiated what we call an APD rotation agreement with guidelines. And how we came to that is, I've been with APD for about 10 and a half years now. And when I first started with APD, what we call safe keeps, or if someone needs their battery jumped or pulled out of the ditch, we had one sole contractor for that. And it was, it was functional, but the industry spoke up about how they believed it was unfair that one company had an opportunity to do that for the public. And this isn't contractual tows like DUI or DWS or so on and so forth. So what we did, I was allowed to go out to the community. I had community meetings. I took the industry and included them in the whole entire process of helping coming up with what they thought was fair for guidelines without regulating it and without making it so difficult to be part of the rotation that it wasn't functional. So it took many months to do it with many public meetings, and we came up with the document. That started, I believe it was March of 2004. There was no fee to be on it. APD in my office was processing all of the impounds, all the paperwork. So we quickly understood that it was functional, but we had to add a fee to be on the rotation. Then a couple years went by, and we realized that everybody on the rotation was charging different rates. So the public was asking us, why was that? So that brought us to going back to the industry, having discussion about what was fair, to them. And that's how we came up with the rates that are now in the rotation guideline. We try to keep the guidelines fairly simple, but the elements that are in it are important, such as insurance, properly zoned property, those type of things. Federal, state, municipal laws, that kind of thing. And we need to continue to keep our document simple but functional. So that's basically, in a real small nutshell, how we got to where we are today.
How did you establish rates, or how were rates established, I should say, not you, but how were rates established?
I went to the industry, we had public meetings, and we discussed. I took the highs that were posted with the clerk's office and the lows. And the highs were real high, and the lows were pretty low. And I said, what do you think is fair? And we had to talk about that. We had to throw it out in several meetings. And once I received their input and we talked some more about it, they agreed that the rates that are posted or that are in the agreement today, they agreed that those are fair. That's their input.
Is this a bid process through municipal procurement or bidding or any of that, or is it just
The
strictly?
rotation, no.
And are there rooms for adjustments like cost of living, fuel increase, surcharges?
There was one adjustment that was, the industry came to us and asked us to take to the assembly and asked when the fuel prices went up, if we would consider taking it to the assembly to have a surcharge included in the rates. And the assembly approved that. So that's been the only change in the rates.
Because I'm concerned to make sure that obviously cost of living does go up, taxes, and of course the cost for employment and things of that nature. We need to make adjustments for that, so I just wanted to know if that was accounted for. Okay. All right, so is that pretty well clear to the committee here?
Actually, Elfie, you're a member, you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, it's quite clear, thank you, Wendy.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not clear on what kinds of tows this particular rate schedule is for. Can
Not
you?
only does it include, what we call safe queue tows.
Mhm.
If you were in a collision, taken to the hospital, we need to clear the intersection, that would be a safe queue.
Mhm.
A no preference would be that you're there with your car, but you don't know who to call, so you ask us to call someone for you.
Okay.
When we go to our rotation if you don't have the
Mhm.
name. Also it includes for like jumping your battery in your car,
Right.
pulling you out of the ditch, that
Right,
type of thing.
right, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And excuse me, these calls are instigated or initiated by APD,
Correct.
okay. Or the fire department, does the fire department have anything to do with these? If they're at a
All of these calls
scene of a
come
wreck,
through
come through APD?
the request.
Okay, good. That's it, sir.
Thank you. All right, so then for the purposes of the change in this draft document, under Title IX, did everybody get a copy of that, by the way? There were some copies made? Okay. The reason that we're having this meeting and this time for this particular code is we're looking for input from the industry as well. And I would like to hear, in a reasonable fashion, if possible, if you have some immediate thought-provoking comments. But I suspect what I probably ought to do is do a little explaining here and perhaps have Ms. Tucker explain and assist me in the PowerPoint sheets that you might have that are important. Is there something that, would you like to start, or would you like me to highlight a point or two of the changes in the draft?
Well, I think that, it might be important to just give kind of an overview
Okay.
of the towing industry and
If you
how we
could.
came to where we were. Is there a slide that precedes that one?
Well, let me move out of the way so people can see.
Let's just move her.
Amanda, is there one before the one you have on the screen? Yeah. I saw the guy just here. Is there a light that we have to turn on up here?
I think there's,
It's blue, it's glowing.
oh, I see it coming on. I see it coming on. It's coming on now. I see the light. I used to tell people, walk towards the light. Joking.
Okay, this is just a general, overview slide, that I use in, all my work. And it doesn't matter if and it applies sort of universally, in many industries, from electrical inspection to tow operation. And so it's sort of like this: what's the rule or the requirement, what did you do, and where is it documented? This is the federal authority over intrastate transportation. And the history of this is that in the late 90s, with the deregulation of the trucking industry on the federal level and the decommissioning of the Interstate Commerce Commission, Congress actually passed a law that is somewhat counterintuitive. Attorneys like me think of the Interstate Commerce Clause as federal regulation only when commerce goes in between different states. And rarely have I seen in my 35-year legal career federal preemption of local government authority at this level. But this is what is the authority for this, and it's actually called Federal Authority over Intra, meaning within the state transportation. And what happened here was that that in deregulating the trucking industry, tow operators got taken along for that same ride. So where many tow operators had purposely, not in more congested areas than we have here in Anchorage, particularly back east where state lines all converge, many tow operators had made sure that they confined their operations within a single state just so that they didn't get caught up in federal regulation. And in the deregulation, it turned out that there were obstacles to economic enterprise that were being imposed by state and local governments. And so this provision came into effect. And it is the preemption and prohibition under this federal law which actually prohibits state and municipal governments from regulating rates of what are called consensual tows. And that's what Assemblymember Honeman was referring to in his introductory remarks here about the industry. So on all, and I use the word consensual tows because maybe the next slide, Amanda, because that's the way that they're described in this report, which Paul has made sure that is posted on the municipal website. So and this report was commissioned in 2005 by an amendment to Title 49, Section 14-501, because in 2005, on a national level, there was a great deal of concern over what was called predatory towing practices. And those practices are translated, we call them, the tow, the type of tow shows up in municipal code as private party impound, but it's called a non-consensual tow in this report. And so that's the language that we're adopting for purposes of conversation. So predatory tow practices became a big issue in 2005 on a national level, and amendments were made to Title 49 to ensure that local and state governments could regulate price on non-consensual tows and could regulate health, safety, and welfare, consumer protection litigation, or consumer protections in the code without running amok of the federal preemption. So exempted from most types of local and state legislation they can be, as Mindy's program is outlined, but they can also be where municipalities go out to bid, or other contractual relationships. And so those aren't covered by the prohibition on regulation, nor, and that's discussed in this report. The other, again, type of, and maybe the next slide, Amanda, on the private consensual tows, as described by Professor Honeman, these are all the citations and where there is, where regulation is prohibited. So, can a state or municipal government set price for consensual tows? No. Can they create routes or zones the way the rotational program can create routes and zones? For private consensual tows, the federal law prohibits that. So for consensual tows, if we were in a larger metropolitan area, it was the practice for the city or state government to say, okay, only so many, only a certain number can operate in this zone, and a certain number can operate in this zone, and that's prohibited under federal law, which preempts state and local law in this area. Can there be service regulation? No, for consensual tows. The areas that can be regulated are size, weight, vehicle, hazmat, cargo. Certain routes, tow operators, of course, have to obey if there's a hazmat particular route in the city, and also safety, financial responsibility, and insurance. Okay, next slide. Non-consensual tows are a different situation. Can price be regulated? Absolutely. Are there routes and zones? No. Size, weight, or hazmat cargo? Yes. And then in the broader sense of not just mechanical safety of the vehicle, but in the public health, safety, and welfare of consumer protection, can that be regulated? For non-consensual tows, yes. And again, as with other tow licensing, financial responsibility and insurance are in there. And then requirement unique to non-consensual tows, but not included in this draft that we're discussing today. Federal law allows state and local governments to require either or both the written authorization or the presence of the actual property owner from which the non-consensual, from which the vehicle is being towed from, the written authorization and or the presence of the property owner or the property owner's agent to be on the spot, and also provides that the agency will not be the tow operator. And so that's all laid out in those federal requirements. Maybe the next slide. The issues that came up in nationally and came to a head around 2005, and then are sometimes reflected in the rate sheets that historically have been filed with the clerk's office, include some of these things. Inadequate signage, no written authorization, failure to uncouple, to release the vehicle when the owner returns, charges for swearing, refusing to accept payment by debit or credit card, that's the cash only situation, excessive rates, after hours and during normal business hours, special gate fees, charging for extra days. And then I took an example here from something that was listed in one of the rate sheets that was filed a few years ago with the clerk's office. So this is an kind of example. No customer contact regarding impounds will be allowed during holidays, evenings, weekends, or weekdays after 5 p.m. Customers must recover their vehicle or property during our normal business hours, 7:30 so what happens if the vehicle is towed at 5:30, then that can run up 3 additional days because it's during a holiday, the person may have to work. And in the environment that we have here, which is a significant lack of public transportation infrastructure that exists in other urban areas our size and smaller, then it's really becomes a significant problem for the city to deal with in general. So on the one, as I said, on the one unique item about requiring the written authorization or presence of the parking lot owner at the time the vehicle is towed, there was a draft that Mr. Flynn asked me to do that changed only that. And that has been one of the items that's been circulated formally and informally, but not introduced. In 2008, a towing ordinance was introduced at the end of Mr. Trainey's tenure, and then because he wasn't elected, he wasn't present to carry that through, and he's back on the assembly now, so he's another person who's very interested on the assembly in looking over this situation in general. So that's sort of the overview for this. We don't have to have this on anymore if you don't want. I could sort of walk us through the areas that we picked out here for change, and then maybe, ask you to supplement that, just,
Yes.
if we haven't had time.
Yes,
My
please.
commitment to Mr. Honeman was to work on this, and have a draft available for Title IX. The way that I couldn't find, I joined the Assembly Council's office late in 2005, and the ordinance, the last major ordinance on towing was approved in 2005 before I joined the office there, and I think that it was drafted with the Department of Law, so I don't have access to the work documents behind that, but I couldn't find any reference to the national discussion that was going on in the lower 48 at about the same time that that title chapter 9.54 and chapter 10.54 for the clerk's office were implemented, and there was a delayed implementation, so they were approved in mid 2005, and then they went into effect, I think, in January 2006. The towing procedures were set out in Title IX. Then there were licensing requirements set out in Title X, and then there was a lot of language, and remains a lot of language that's exactly the same, or almost exactly the same. And so part of the project that we will work on to clean that up is to set out a uniform set of definitions in Title IX and the sort of the guts of the regulation in Title IX, and then have Title X point to it and take care of the licensing and the license application, instead of having so many duplicative provisions. So the first section that is amended here is the definition section, and that was just to state out what our terms were, so that we can make the appropriate distinction between consensual tow, non-consensual tow, rotational tow, and then storage and release services. Because there's regulation that applies to non-consensual tow that shouldn't, and apply to consensual or to rotational tow. The next section of the code, which was compliance with the chapter I didn't have any to Then in parking in private areas, there were, sections here that I couldn't, that were just sort of wordsmithing on my part, just cause it didn't, the language didn't, I couldn't tell what it was meaning. So, my initial draft here, just to read it, how it would read, would be that, parking area adjacent to a commercial enterprise, it is unlawful for a person to engage in unauthorized parking of a motor vehicle in a private area which is adjacent to a commercial enterprise if such private area has been signposted and otherwise clearly designated as a private area for authorized parking in accordance with this chapter. And then the next section, parking in other areas, it is unlawful for a person to park or cause to be parked a motor vehicle on private property not owned or controlled by that person without the express permission of the property owner or authorized agent. Towing of vehicles, we have a state law, which is AS 2810.502 that establishes what services are subject to lien, and then on a local level, this is how the vehicles get to be impounded and that lien applied. So changes there are to sort of tie the towing under 9.54 to better tie that into the license under 10.54 in the state law. And then I added the state law reference. The next section is the rotational tow program, and just to add a clarification at the bottom, that the rates for rotational tow services shall not exceed the maximum allowable rates under the rotational tow program. So that's all that this code, and when we make the changes, commensurate changes to Title 10, we'll have to say about rates in the rotational tow program.
Quick discussion between January 15th and March 1st. I think you and I discussed this. Could you refresh my memory?
Mindy will confirm this, I think, for me, that when we tried to fix this in 2008, the one change that she asked was to conform the code to actual practice, and the rotational guidelines say that they have to apply by March 1st, and she asked that the code be amended to conform to practice. So that's why we have the change in dates there. That's a housekeeping that I carried over from discussions 3 or 4 years ago.
Thank you.
After checking with her current guidelines. So on rates now, the only rates that really should be forwarded with the application fee are the rates for non-consensual tows. And so 030 is amended. Then as a what many the congressional report, which is on the website, has examples from many states and jurisdictions, and one of the most common ways to define a reasonable rate for non-consensual tows is to tie it to the rotational rate program. Most municipalities and local governments have a rotational rate program. Sometimes it's by contract, sometimes it's not. Most places just have a prohibition that the non-consensual tow rate will not exceed the rotational tow rate, so that they are in sync. In talking to Mr. Honeman and talking to the clerk's office and others, there seemed to be some sense that the non-consensual tows may need to have an additional factor in there for reasonableness, and so this draft in B, you'll see, has a fee that's no greater than 125%. So that's 25% more than the comparable allowable rate under the rotational tow program.
Can I interrupt you just a second?
Yes.
We plugged a number in here. This is a working draft, as I told you. We need some input here, because this is one of those areas where some businesses have different expenses and needs that may or may not cover this percentage, so, we're not, yes, Chief?
I didn't mean to interrupt, just wanna get your list.
Okay. So this particular number is just for talking discussion point, and based on what we had seen from across the nation on some of these issues. So I plug in a number as a placeholder. It could be a little more, it could be a little less, but it also depends on how much my colleagues and I can agree on when it comes to time to vote, make this number set in stone. Fair enough?
When you're talking about the 125% or the total fee, are you talking about the call out, you're talking about the storage, are we lumping everything together? Because I don't know how the rest of the folks do, but I do know we have call out fee, there is a fee for coming into the yard, and there is a storage fee.
Right. And I think
Plus
that's
there's
addressing.
mileage. There's mileage too generally on these things.
And after hour release.
And that's in discussion for, I know we'll have that in the next, just a little later in the chapter, so if we'll hold on a second with those questions, but those are good questions, write them down so we can talk about that. Good questions. Chief?
So, I'm amused here, I'm getting my mind around this. Here's what I think I see so far, is those who want, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but, those who want to participate in the rotational tow have gotten together with Mindy, and they've kinda come to some internal consensus on the rate. And if people don't wanna do that, then they're free not to do that, they just aren't part of the rotation. If the non-consensual rates now become some function of what the Mindy's rotational rates are, then all of a sudden there'll be a bunch of pressure on Mindy, in reaching that consensus for the rotational tow, cause it's gonna set what's gonna happen for everybody else on the non-consensual thing, and her life will become miserable, and you guys will be, those discussions will be heated. Because people have an interest in that, even if they don't wanna participate in the rotational tow, cause it's gonna set the rate for, activities outside of that. So I wonder how we'll wrestle with that. I'm not saying that's a bad way to go, I'm just trying to get my mind around it.
It's a bad way if we're making Mindy unhappy, I'm sorry.
I will say
Don't
that.
throw Mindy under the bus.
I will say that I believe her topic of discussion for setting rates have been very collaborative with the industry and very participative, I understand. Not necessarily all in 100% unanimous agreement, but basically with some very good consensus.
Have we seen that phenomenon show up in other jurisdictions that have linked non-consensual rate to the rotation rate?
What we've seen, is that the tow industry, or that function of that segment of the tow industry that is interested in participation, whether it be the rotational tow program or in, meetings like this, has been instrumental in assisting local governments with grappling with all of these issues. And so, in the examples that I looked at, the rotational tow rates closest to Mindy's program were then developed with somebody like Mindy, and then they were put out to bid. And then those folks who wanted to bid, and the criteria became part of that, but that the rates then still were limited and couldn't go any higher than what the rotational tow program was. So this system would capitalize on the long-standing, or fairly long-standing relationship that Mindy has had from one administration to another, in terms of engaging the people that perform the services and coming to what a range of rates. And as the rotational tow program provides, those rates are maximums, and not everybody charges up to that maximum.
Mr. Drummond?
My question was about the payment of the annual fee. That's currently in existence, right? Okay. if a towing company has been participating year after year after year, and they don't have their fee paid by March 15th, or whatever that date is, will they continue to be called?
No, they'll be removed immediately, and they know that going in.
When is immediately? Because, I mean, they could get a lot of calls between January and March 1st.
Well, how it works, and how it's worked ever since I've been involved with it is, from January 1 to the end of February, I'm keeping in contact with them, like, remember, March 1st, you need to have your fee paid. Yeah, okay. And they usually all show up at the door the last 7 days. And it's really not a problem. So if they don't.
Okay,
if
so
they-
that hasn't been, that
it hasn't been a
traditionally has not been a problem?
No.
Okay.
And by March 1st, if they haven't paid, they know that they're going to be taken off. It's
Mhm.
no surprise.
Okay, and if you have a new company, they should probably be requested to pay the fee when they sign up for rotational, for being on the rotation.
All the requirements have to be met, and then you accept their fee, which would be the last thing.
Okay,
you would
but
do.
the ones that you've been working with over the years are,
Correct.
they generally come through and you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have issues with that? Okay, that's what I wanna check, okay.
And that fee just, stating something that may be obvious to everybody, but that fee to participate in the rotational tow program is separate and distinct from the license that they have to be a tow operator. And the license fee
Mhm.
is paid to the clerk's office.
Right, okay.
Okay, so Ms. Tucker, if you would continue.
Okay, so, we have the section on rates, and I'd like to pick up with, on the questions that were asked, here if I may, just preliminarily, on the vision. The vision of, comparable rates here is that a rate sheet, a uniform rate sheet will be developed through the clerk's office for non-consensual tows. And that will look much like the rate sheet that's involved in the, rotational tows. And it will have space to include other particular services that may be needed, in the non-consensual tow situation, but are not on the, rotational tow situation. So that we will be able to compare apples to apples, and it won't take, a cryptographer to figure out the rates that the, tow operators are charging. I mean, in going through rates from years before that are still on file and on PDF, some of them I couldn't make head or tail of, because we don't offer at this point a rate sheet for the, individual tow operator to fill out and put rates on, and it's sort of up in the air. So some of them are 20 pages long, and I find their rates buried in there, along with a bunch of narrative, like what I put on the board there about when and if you can fine print tells you when you can donate your car. And other ones are just handwritten out, that's okay, we do this, and they're pretty simple. But I think if we provide, a apples to apples rate sheet, then we're gonna get a better result.
And
So that's what's envisioned.
Might take just another quick pause, if good. Amanda, by the way, is a licensed clerk for the municipal clerk's office, and she handles all the license and permits, most all the license permits, right, Amanda? Thank you.
Right, and one of the things that we have done since, the efforts that were made in 2008, when Amanda came on board, we were able to introduce her to that, and she and Mindy have a working relationship, and Mindy's our guru, so, it's been really helpful. Thank you. And so the rest of this section, which is 030, is kind of housekeeping to make the distinction that we're talking about non-consensual tow services, not rotational tow, not, consensual tows, and to tie it back in to, the municipal clerk, just to make it clear, so tow operators can go to one place and see most of what has to happen, which is the municipal clerk shall not accept a tow operator license application for non-consensual tow services without the itemized list of fees, but we'll give you a form. The next section, has to do, as Paul mentioned before, with, storage facilities. And there vehicle, to storage after a non-consensual tow, that would allow, some flexibility, but also give a skeleton outline, of what's, required in terms of accessibility to cars, or motor vehicles after, tow. So, this is fairly, specific but self-explanatory here, and, basically, it would get down to a storage facility can't have, a whole slew of days that they declare holidays, where people can't get their vehicles. Each tow operator can have up to 4 individual holidays that they had not staffed and that people just can't get their vehicle. Otherwise, if it's not one of those 4, and it's, we got state holidays, we got federal holidays, we got school holidays, we got so many holidays that recognize one way or the other that we have to have people have their cars. So if there are those, there are some minimum times or minimum number of hours that need to be there. But what's taken out is this provision, which is in code now and says this: each towing operator shall maintain an office in the municipality and shall maintain at least one telephone line to that office, which is used solely in connection with towing services. The office shall be staffed by at least one person at all times. Okay, I've taken that out. That didn't make any sense to me. A lot of people aren't using landlines. They don't have, a lot of the storage yards don't have an office on the storage yard. And they're not staffing it 24 hours a day now, so let's just take that out and replace it with something that actually works. So that's the background for that one. Tow away from privately owned areas is the next section of code, and this also had language that I really had trouble following. And so I just did some housekeeping here about the signage. So it's important, I think, for the signs to be at conspicuous locations for vehicles entering into the parking lot rather than after they're already parked. And we have daylight hours, so it's not really hours during the day. We have daylight hours, and we have times that there's not enough sunlight for visibility. So I've sort of replaced the day and night in there. I don't think that the signs have to describe the private area in which parking is prohibited. Many areas parking isn't prohibited. It's just unauthorized parking is prohibited, and they need to designate the areas.
Why do you
instead of
make any
describing.
sense how you put a 30 by 30 sign in a 1-foot section?
Okay, so tell me this again.
Well,
It
you
may be
got
one that I didn't.
Line A says the sign shall be 30 inches by 30 inches. The sign shall be posted less than 5 feet and no more than 6 feet. So you want almost a 3-foot sign put in a 1-foot section.
That's the bottom of the sign.
It
Okay,
doesn't say anything
no
where it
less
says
than
this
5 feet and
from
no more than
6 feet above the ground. So it can't be less than 5 and it can't be above 6.
Oh, so it's a 30 by 30 sign in
No,
this.
30 inches.
Okay,
which
good
is
catch.
The bottom of
Good
the
catch.
sign.
No,
It's
it's
in
not.
there,
Even
just
the
make
bottom
it
of the
in.
sign
Yeah.
doesn't work.
We'll change that.
Yeah.
I just wondered how you put a
Good.
30
Make
It's a
the
good
sign
catch.
this wide, this tall.
Good job.
With 2-inch letters.
No,
Good
30 by
2-inch
30.
letters. I mean,
So
How about 30 by 30
That's a
stretched out a foot high?
regulation.
No,
Foot
what do you
wide.
have to do? You have to put it
Yeah,
in
you
the
just
front.
roll it in a ball and put a 30-inch sign like this. I just wondered how you did
I love it.
Good
I love it.
Good question.
Okay, so,
Good question.
good catch. Yeah, that's what I mean, you have
It's
to
been
post
that
it
way
on
for
this table. Thank you.
30 years,
Thank
so.
you, yeah.
I've always
So
wondered.
take it-
I just
yeah,
wondered.
we wondered
That's
how
why
that
we're all
works.
here. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And it's a working draft. Thank you.
No, this isn't law. This has been law since.
No, this is working.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
We,
I think like 3 to
Mr.
9
Chair.
feet would probably work, just